Starting tomorrow, our parents are moving in with us. I bought a house with a yard, so there should be no complaints. If you're not keen on it, you might find yourself sleeping outside. On a moving day, my husband Larry nonchalantly informed me about his decision to live with his parents. Moreover, he chose the house without my input and left me to manage all the house hunting alone. It's as if he views me merely as household help, assuming I have no opinions. In response, I said, "Fine, then I'll sleep in the yard from now on, but don't be surprised if someone joins me." His reply was blunt, "Stop being stubborn and just do what you're always told. Don't worry, you won't regret it. Sleep well, but don't choke on your spit, okay?" His last words were harsh. "You'll regret this," he said. So I began preparing, picturing Larry's concerned face the next day. He was visibly upset when he saw the tent I had set up in the yard. He paused, looking confused as he approached. "Janice, why are you setting up a tent?" he asked. "You said you'd sleep in the yard, so I'm just using my camping tent. It's quite spacious out here," I replied calmly, stepping out of the tent with a smile. Larry frowned deeper and muttered, "You'll regret this. Sleep however you like, but don't say I didn't warn you." He couldn't believe I would sleep outside. "You're ridiculous, you know. Even if you like camping, setting up a tent in your yard is just embarrassing," he scoffed. However, I stood firm, ready to counter his remarks. My husband still wore a smirk, but inside I was quietly amused. Just then, my in-laws arrived, visibly taken aback by the sight of the tent. Whether they understood the situation or not, I felt somewhat relieved, hoping their presence might soften my husband's approach. When I greeted them, they looked puzzled and asked about the tent. "Janice, why is there a tent in the yard? Are you planning a camping trip?" they inquired with curiosity. Before I could answer, my husband interjected. "Oh, Janice wanted to sleep outside. She's a big fan of camping, you know," he said smoothly, masking the truth with ease. I couldn't believe how composed he was while misleading them. My in-laws took the sight of the tent in stride, aware of my fondness for camping. "Just be careful not to catch a cold," they advised with genuine concern before heading inside. Once they were out of earshot, my husband reverted to his usual authoritative tone, instructing me, "Now go make dinner and don't say anything unnecessary to my parents, all right?" I replied, albeit a bit sarcastically, "Sure thing, cooking for 5 then. Can a housewife even count? It's just the 4 of us, you, me, and your parents. Stop fussing and start cooking. You're getting on my nerves." As my husband grumbled and made his way toward the new house, he suddenly stopped dead in his tracks, stunned. A man slowly emerged from the tent. The quiet yard was now thick with tension. My husband's face was a canvas of confusion and shock, words failing him momentarily. "Sorry to intrude," the man said calmly. It was Raymond, my husband's boss, an imposing figure he dared not underestimate. The sudden appearance of Raymond from the tent I had claimed as my sleeping quarters the night before left my husband flustered. "Why is Raymond here? What's happening?" my husband managed to sputter out. The situation looked incriminating, almost as if I had arranged for Raymond to be there, a wild interpretation of my previous declaration about not regretting who I chose to sleep with. Raymond explained, his voice even, "I just got here about 40 minutes ago. I also enjoy camping and was waiting here in the tent until everyone was up." My husband's face paled, realizing the gravity of the misunderstanding and that his private remarks might have reached Raymond's ears. "I had heard from Janice before, but I didn't want to believe until now that you were hiding your true nature and mistreating your wife," Raymond spoke, his tone slow but tinged with disapproval. Panic took hold of my husband. He trembled, trying to defend himself. "No, that's not it. I was just being a bit firm. It's not mistreatment or anything," he stammered, his excuse sounding hollow against the backdrop of his earlier domineering behavior. Raymond's voice grew increasingly heated as he confronted the disparity between the person he knew at work and the one revealed at home. "I can't believe this, Larry. You do great work at the company, but to treat your wife like this?" I'm frankly disappointed. Desperate, my husband pleaded. I never meant to mistreat my wife. I've just been stressed lately with work not going well, and I guess I took it out on her. Sweat beaded his forehead as he scrambled for justification. His previous arrogance dissipated, leaving him looking vulnerable and exposed in front of his boss. Despite his professional respect, this personal blunder was casting a long shadow over his character. Despite my husband's reputation for integrity, both Raymond and I were now aware of the truth about his behavior. My husband had hidden many things, and Raymond's visit was directly linked to uncovering these secrets. During a tense moment, Raymond quietly mentioned a woman's name, which made my husband visibly uneasy. Betty, you're familiar with her, right? Yes, she works at a client I handle. Is there an issue with her? My husband responded, confusion spreading across his face. She's my wife, Raymond revealed, his voice calm but filled with gravity. My husband's face transformed with shock and fear. Raymond's gaze was unyielding, watching as my husband struggled to find words. Betty is Raymond's wife? But that can't be. You have different last names, he stammered. Betty uses her maiden name at work. It's easier for everyone since that's how they know her. Many women at her workplace do the same, Raymond explained. I listened, stunned, as my husband babbled, unaware that his casual affair was with his boss's wife. Raymond continued, I was truly stunned when I learned about your affair, especially that the other woman was my wife. This isn't just a simple misunderstanding. Having an affair is unacceptable. Caught off guard, my husband tried to deny the allegations. The catalyst for his cruel behavior towards me had been my discovery of infertility. While undergoing treatments, he became distant and unsupportive, leaving me feeling isolated. One day, claiming he was on a business trip, I saw him departing for a romantic getaway. That's when I started digging into his affairs, eventually discovering his mistress was Raymond's wife. Empowered by this revelation, I was consumed by a thirst for revenge. When my husband suggested buying a house in the countryside, it became the perfect opportunity to enact my plan. I closely monitored his actions and meticulously crafted my response, leading to the current explosive revelation. Larry, you claimed you wanted children, so I redoubled my efforts with the infertility treatments. But instead of supporting me, you ignored me completely. You left me for Betty, didn't you? I accused, my words dripping with fury. You never meant to mistreat me, but you were pushing me to my breaking point, aiming for a divorce. Keeping me in the dark about moving in with your parents was just part of your torment, wasn't it? As I confronted him, every word struck a nerve. His face turned pale and his body shook, but he pushed himself to deny the accusations. I admit I may have been tough on Janice, but I strongly reject the accusations of an affair. It's just a baseless claim from Janice and Raymond. There's no evidence, right? Janice mentioned a romantic trip, but I simply ran into Betty by chance during a business trip. Raymond's gaze conveyed a mixture of disappointment and disdain, reflecting the gravity of the situation. My husband was cornered, and his usual confidence had vanished, replaced by desperation as he attempted to salvage his crumbling facade. We would meet for work and go out for drinks, but there was no affair. I understand there's no concrete evidence. You can't just accuse me without proof, my husband argued. However, Raymond remained composed, his gaze stern. You're definitely having an affair. Admit it and start by apologizing to me, then to Janice. My husband's denial was immediate. I didn't have an affair. If you want me to confess, show me the evidence. Don't just order me around. Anger flared in his voice, his frustration palpable, a clear sign he felt trapped, his usual facade crumbling under pressure. Amidst his outburst, I calmly addressed him. Larry, why are you raising your voice? It's reverberating inside the house. Oh, isn't that Mr. Raymond over there? I'm terribly sorry for causing any disturbance. Raymond intervened, still calm. Actually, I came today to discuss Larry's affair. The revelation shocked the inlaws. They stood frozen, their expressions a mix of disbelief and shock as a heavy silence fell. After a tense moment, Larry's father-in-law cautiously spoke. "Larry, is it true about the affair? It's hard to believe Raymond would joke about something so serious." "Dad, it's not true. I'm innocent. Raymond is just assuming things without any proof. I swear I haven't done anything like that. You can trust me," Larry protested. "Janice, what's happening?" Larry's mother asked, confusion written all over her face. "I'm sorry to startle you, but what Raymond is saying is true. Larry has been having an affair, and the other woman is Raymond's wife. Now I will prove it," I stated firmly. I directed everyone's gaze to a specific spot. Their eyes followed, landing on the tent. Confusion marked their faces, but they were about to witness something even more shocking. "I'm so sorry," Betty apologized as she emerged from the tent. Raymond hadn't arrived alone. Betty had accompanied him, meaning she had overheard the entire conversation. Meeting Betty for the first time, the in-laws were startled to see an unfamiliar woman stepping out from the tent. Meanwhile, my husband was visibly shaken, realizing that his affair partner had been right there all along. "We don't need any more evidence, Larry. Betty has already admitted to the affair," I explained. "I wanted to see your reaction, and you certainly showed your true colors." "Has she already told you everything?" Larry asked, his voice trembling, as Betty nodded silently. His body shook and his face paled. "Father, Mother," I continued, "as I mentioned earlier, I have been mistreated by Larry. I wasn't even informed about this living arrangement. I had to sleep in a tent in the yard because Larry ordered it. He treated me as disposable because of my infertility and chose to have an affair with Betty. Larry, you told us changing our environment might improve the chances of fertility treatments. Was that all a lie? You said you would support me," I confronted him, the disappointment and anger of my in-laws finally bringing Larry to his knees, where he prostrated himself on the ground, his forehead rubbing fiercely against the earth. "I'm truly sorry," he murmured, his voice choked. I was shocked to discover Janice's infertility. Having children was my dream. So, I thought, if I couldn't have children with Betty, I'd need to find someone else who could fulfill my dream, Larry shakily confessed, the weight of his decisions crashing down on him as he lay prostrate on the ground. He continued to apologize, his forehead still pressed to the earth, but then he was suddenly thrown down with a dull thud by his enraged father-in-law. "Janice wanted children too, didn't she? Have you ever considered her feelings about being unable to conceive? Do you see your wife as property to be discarded when she no longer meets your needs?" his father-in-law demanded, his voice thick with anger and disbelief, a stark contrast to his usual gentle demeanor. It was heartbreaking for him to see his son commit such callous acts and still try to justify them. "I've never been a parent," his father-in-law continued, his voice breaking with emotion. "But the thought of my child doing such things would be unbearable." Meanwhile, Larry's mother approached, her expression equally pained. "Larry, I am going to divorce you and seek alimony for the mental anguish you've caused," she declared, holding up the already prepared divorce papers. Still on the ground, Larry took the papers, but shockingly retorted, "Dad's right. To me, a wife is just property, disposable when no longer useful. It's all Janice's fault. Had I known about her infertility, I wouldn't have married her. Discovering it after marriage feels like I was deceived. What alimony should I pay? You, the infertile one, should be paying." Enraged, my father-in-law grabbed Larry by the collar, ready to confront him physically, but I intervened. "Why stop, Janice? Are you planning to forgive him?" he asked, bewildered. "No, Father, I will never forgive Larry, but I won't let you harm yourself over him. He's not worth it," I calmly replied, persuading my father-in-law to slowly release Larry's collar. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out a piece of paper and addressed Larry. "So everything is my fault because I'm infertile, and you're the victim, right?" Larry was left speechless as I handed him the paper, which contained results he had never anticipated. It turns out that the cause of our infertility wasn't solely mine. The revelation hit everyone present, shaking the foundations of Larry's accusations and painting a complex picture of our shared struggles.
reshaping the narrative he had crafted to suit his selfish ends.
I had asked Larry to provide a sample for testing some time ago, knowing that infertility issues aren't always related to women. The results diagnosed Larry with a zoospermia, which, while potentially treatable, posed a significant challenge. I had planned to discuss these results with Larry, but his focus was elsewhere, caught up in his affair, leaving no room for meaningful conversations between us. Now, ironically, it was the first time we were truly confronting each other in a long time. "I don't believe this. Is this some kind of setup, Janice, trying to frame me?" "It won't work," Larry protested, disbelief written all over his face. "It doesn't matter if you don't believe it," I responded firmly. "You'll come to understand in time. My only wish now is to end our marriage and ensure you face the consequences you deserve. Now sign the divorce papers," I urged him. "Are you serious with that tone? It's got to be a lie. Tell me it's a lie," Larry mumbled, his voice desperate as he repeatedly reviewed the test results, his head in his hands. Raymond, the in-laws, and I could only sigh deeply at his state. Even Betty seemed filled with regret. Leaving Larry to grapple with his new reality, Raymond and his wife returned home, likely to discuss their next steps. Afterward, the in-laws turned to me, their expression somber. "We may not have been aware of everything, but we failed to see the pain you were going through, Janice. We don't expect forgiveness, but we want you to know we are here for you. We will support you, even if you divorce Larry, and will ensure he takes responsibility." "There's no need for apologies," I replied, feeling a mix of relief and responsibility. I was at fault too for not speaking up sooner and allowing myself to be manipulated. Plus, I almost caused you both a lot of trouble because of my silence. Here, I decided to reveal something I had kept hidden from my in-laws. Their response, a chuckle, showed they understood the depth of my planning. "It's all Larry's doing," they murmured after I had confessed. After finalizing the divorce, I returned to my parents' home. It didn't take long before frantic calls began to come in from my now ex-husband. "Janice, what's happening? This is all you are doing, isn't it? Answer me," his voice demanded over the phone, a mix of desperation and accusation clear in his tone. Suppressing a laugh, I responded, "Why so panicked? I don't know much except maybe that the new house you pushed onto me is defective." "Stop joking around. I just realized it's uninhabitable because I've been too frantic to notice. What are you going to do about this?" "I'm not doing anything, Larry. You pushed the house hunting onto me, remember? It's your responsibility now." My response was calm, signaling a definitive end to our shared responsibilities and signaling the start of a new chapter for me, free from his deceit. "Following your instructions, I took on the task of house hunting, and you made the final decision to purchase, didn't you? Is there a problem now?" The decision to buy the house with a yard was entirely my husband's, but he offloaded the entire search process onto me. By then, I was already contemplating revenge, which shaped my strategy of intentionally choosing a fundamentally flawed house. You can find online tips for spotting defects in a house, like checking for uneven floors, ceiling issues, and the functionality of doors and windows. I prepared a detailed checklist and attended property viewings, purposefully selecting the one with the most problems. My ex-husband's reaction upon discovering the house's numerous issues confirmed that my plan had worked perfectly. The only oversight was his unannounced plan to have my in-laws move in, which could have complicated things for them. Fortunately, they now live peacefully in another place far from his influence. "Janice, help me out. I can't afford to move with the alimony payments and I've lost my job. Plus, there's the fertility treatment," he pleaded over the phone. "I truly regret everything. I shouldn't have cheated. I should have valued you more." "So you only realized you were wrong after discovering you're infertile? Well, that's good for you. Reflect on your mistakes and start over. Good luck living alone," I responded coolly. "Wait, weren't we married? Don't abandon me, please listen to me," he continued, his voice becoming desperate. His self-centered remarks almost drove me to explode with frustration. Done with him, I found any further interaction merely troublesome, yet I had to make my point crystal clear. A wife is not property to be discarded when no longer needed, Larry. Remember you said that? Let me reiterate, you are no longer needed in my life. You're expendable. Live with your regrets forever. Goodbye. I could still hear his voice through the phone, but I hung up without a second thought and blocked his number. He probably learned the hard way that some actions are irreversible. As for me, I started a blog and created videos about camping, enjoying a side income while engaging in my hobby. Raymond, now divorced, had more free time and occasionally joined me on camping trips or helped with my video projects. When I expressed my gratitude, Raymond remarked, "Ignoring such a wonderful woman like you baffled me, Larry. If you ever need help, feel free to reach out." Perhaps due to my vulnerable state back then, my heart skipped a beat. But it wasn't until years later that I realized this flutter was real. Yes, Raymond and I ended up getting married, but that's a story for another time.